Welcome to another live stream, everyone. Thank you for being here with me. Bitcoin is really trying to gain some footing right now, but as I was mentioning on the other channel, I really do have a feeling that Bitcoin and as well as many altcoins are going to end up pushing a little bit lower. We're going to have to see what happens with that, but I want to start diving into several different time frames for Bitcoin. I want to take a look at a handful of altcoins, some of the positions that I'm in, and so on. So guys, just looking at Bitcoin on the lower time frame, we're still setting lower lows and lower highs, right? I mean, currently we have that low. We have since set a lower low. And I mentioned yesterday, actually, that although it was nice to see that we were grabbing, filling most of this wick here and that it looked like the bulls were trying to gain some ground here and push a little bit higher, I had mentioned that it's not actually a valid Stuber fib when I pull something like this, even though it would have worked out, right? We would have hit my first couple of take profits. We hit the 0.5. We got very close to the 214 target. So it's possible that these things still play out the same. However, it's not a valid Stuber fib because this was our low. This is our lower low. That was our confirmed lower high. And we never did end up breaking that level. So much like what we have right now, we are currently finding support, which looks to me like it would be very close to an 886 level. Yeah, very close to that. But once again, this isn't actually a valid Stuber fib formation. It is nice to see that we're finding some support, even a little bit higher, at the 786, 886 here. Nice to see that we're seeing some support here, but the downtrend has not broken. The fact that we set this lower low here, that confirmed this as our lower high. Yesterday, you'll remember that I was talking about our lower high being up here around 114.6 thousand. Now our confirmed lower high since setting our lower low is right around 113.4 thousand US dollars. So at this point, basically I need to see that level break, because even if at this point, if we set another lower low here, the confirmed lower high barely changes. Basically my red line would drop to about here because we would have our low, our new lower low, and our new confirmed lower high. Unfortunately, the downtrend structure doesn't change a whole lot if we do print that lower low. Instead, or if we end up getting something like this, for example, well, then we have a new lower low, break a lower high. At that point, we can start looking for that reversal to start looking for some sort of a Stuber fib setup. And we would have the broken trend at least giving us a little momentum. So just a little bit of confluence for that bullish setup rather than just YOLOing into this thinking that, hey, this is a double bottom. Yeah, you know what? This absolutely could play out like a double bottom. It's just a little bit risky because we haven't broken the downtrend even on the 5-minute chart before retesting this. So that's that's exactly what I was talking about yesterday. And we saw it on a few altcoins as well. But yeah, that's basically how it's looking on the 5-minute currently. Even if I bring up the trend master, I mean, you can see up here, we set a slightly lower sell signal, which was just a bearish sign in the market at that point. And notice we've printed a lower buy signal since. So everything on the 5-minute is still trending to the downside. That's why, even though I'm bullish on the market in general, I'm not FOMOing into any new Bitcoin scalps. I still do have a nice position open on Bitcoin, just a quarter of my position left from $107,580. I shared this one live in my Telegram, as well as ended up doing a live stream on Financial Summit right after taking that position. That was on September 1st. Still, at this point, the rest, it could end up getting stopped out at break even, and I would be kicking myself for that. I may actually end up loosening the stop loss since I have taken beautiful profits on this position. I only have a quarter of this still running because I like to pay myself on the way, but I also like to hold on to a position if I can. Let the runners run, trading the range first, but hoping to catch that home run trade with a part of a position if the market's willing to give it to me, basically. So at this point, the 4-hour. And guys, I was talking about this yesterday, that if we pull back to this support level, you're going to see a lot of doom and gloom on social media. A lot of people love getting very bearish at support, just like people love getting very bullish at resistance. Everyone knows you're supposed to buy support, sell resistance, but when the time comes, it's actually very hard mentally to do. And even with very large accounts, with very large followings, you'll see them make the same mistakes, because support always looks weakest and resistance, the price, always looks strongest. that's just unfortunately how our emotions play games with us. But let's take a deeper dive into the 4-hour here. A couple of things. I want to bring up the Trend Master because that's something that I was talking about recently. Why basically I was looking for this to see if we would end up cutting the rally short and not ending up hitting my purple box up here around, getting up towards that resistance around 120,000 US dollars. I had mentioned that if we get a lower trending sell signal, that would be a big red flag to me, as with the MDX Trend Master. Generally, when these signals are trending in a certain direction, I don't really like to fight that trend. However, I do also prefer to look basically at structure first and looking for indicators for confluence basically after that. So for me, it's always structure first. So if I remove this, just looking at this would just be a typical Stuber setup, right? For those of you who do trade the 5-minute more so like I do, you know that this is the kind of setup where I would, even though this is where the downtrend broke, right? Because we had our low, lower low, confirmed lower high. This is where we broke that downtrend. Yeah, we got a nice little pump after that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, we broke resistance, it's time to long right now. Generally speaking, breakout traders end up getting wrecked. I would rather wait for those deep pullbacks and retesting support when looking for a long. Not to say that you always get them, right? I mean, we could have just kept going like this, in which case, whatever. I had a long position running anyways. But at this point, one of the reasons why I'm still willing to hold on to this position is because the structure of my chart hasn't changed. Yeah, the micro trend, we lost support. Absolutely, right? Because we had our high, higher low. We broke that, trending to the downside. But that's the micro trend. So right now, if this were a 5-minute chart, basically, I would not be looking to long at anything in this general area because I want that pullback. And like I said, it doesn't always happen, but it's more so if the trade setup happens. That's the thing. You always hear traders mention that, it pays to have patience. And this is one of those situations where, yeah, unfortunately, it takes a long time for a 4-hour chart to retrace and retest those levels and retest your trade setups and that sort of thing. But if this were a shorter time frame, this is where I would start to look for long positions, basically. And that's not to say this level has to hold. In fact, if this were a typical Stuber setup, you guys know at this point, I like to ladder in the 786, the 886, and then ladder some entries in my swing fail pocket just to really help bring my average entry down closer to my invalidation level. Just like on the way up, I like to ladder out of my positions, right? I like to ladder in, I like to ladder out. It takes a lot of the emotional stress out of the game when you can, first of all, your invalidation is much closer if you can pull your average entry down and minimize those losses, because every trader takes losses. It's not about winning every single trade. Although this month I am sitting at about I think it's a 72% hit rate for wins. Absolutely beautiful month. But you don't need a hit rate that's that high as long as you have proper risk reward management, basically making sure that when you do take your losses, they are controlled. They are much smaller than the wins you take. So at this point, if I were looking for a swing position, basically on a 4-hour chart, I would be looking to start laddering in around 109.6 thousand down towards 105.6 thousand. After that point, basically below 105.5, I start to get a little bit concerned about the health of the market at that point. And at that point, I would consider that maybe that lower sell signal is going to carry some significant weight to it. But at this point, at least we do have support below us if we do end up pushing a little bit lower. As I mentioned, the ALGO master also as confluence lining up with that Fibonacci pocket. So I love to see that AI agrees with my Fibonacci pull. That's great confluence to have there. Volume delta indicator with the point of control, this white line here. So notice that is just slightly below the price right now. So it is possible that, the price front runs that 786 and we don't actually drop down there if this point of control is going to carry some weight there. So again, just another level of support below us. So I don't think all hope is lost. Another thing that I want to bring up is the liquidations indicator. So you can see all these brown, gold, yellow lines, whatever color you want to call that. You're seeing a lot of these bars above us. So these are basically 50 to 100x liquidation levels. So high leverage liquidation levels. And interestingly enough, notice where those levels happen to line up. So first of all, what I want to say is there's a lot of liquidations and liquidity forming above the price at this point. And as well, even if we end up going to grab the lower liquidity first, notice where a lot of it lines up. A lot of it actually lines up in my fib pocket here or just above. And the end of it is basically in my green box here, my swing fail between my 1 and my 115 fib. So even if we come down here, that's another reason why I think that there's still a good chance that the bulls step back in at support, because if anything, to me, it looks like the market makers would want to come and grab that liquidity before going and grabbing the higher liquidity. So again, just another indicator that's showing a little bit of confluence with some of the levels that I'm watching basically. AI charting tools, basically just showing that we have a lot of support below us, a lot of demand zones. You can see overlapping green pockets, just a lot of support below us. So yeah, I really don't think that all hope is lost. But again, if we start losing that 105,000, 105.5 thousand, I'll start to have my bigger concerns there. Guys, for those of you who have been interested in how I pull Fibonacci's, how I look at market structure, just all that sort of stuff in general, I will pull up the QR code. If that's something that interests you, just seeing more examples, how I pull fibs, how I look at market structure, how I use my indicators, just some of my personal trade strategies, some trade setup ideas that I'm looking at, my overall thoughts on the market, do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code on the screen there. And as well, guys, my partners at BloFin, there's currently about one more day remaining on the current deposit bonus and trading volume bonus promotion that my partners at BloFin are giving my followers currently at this time. So if you do want to take advantage of that, you still have today and the better part of tomorrow, I believe. So basically one more day there. But yeah, guys, like I said, in my channel, this was a trade that I shared live yesterday, in fact, on Aster. A lot of you guys are probably following Aster lately. There's a lot of hype around that coin. Absolutely crushing it on that trade. It was shared live, just to bring it up here. It was a typical Stuber fib. That's the thing, right? Let me get rid of the Trendmaster here. And basically, you can see I have these little white lines because this was our low. We set a lower low. That means the highest point between the two was right here, our confirmed higher or lower high at that point. So here is where we broke that. And just like what I was talking about on the 4-hour chart with Bitcoin, you guys, how I was talking about those Stubers and how I like to see the price pull back into support. That's exactly what happened here, right? I started laddering into my entries. I think I had about 3 entries down in this pocket yet, because this coin is so volatile that I had my heavier laddered entries a little bit lower. So unfortunately never tagged those, but I did get a couple of them and I am sitting in a beautiful profit on this. This is a 10x trade. So currently sitting, well, very close to 500%. When I started the stream, it was just over 500%, but yeah, about 470% at this point for the remainder of my position here. And guys, something that I'm using for invalidation is, you can see my purple arrows here. If I bring up the MDX Trendmaster, and this is something I was talking about today whenever we printed a new one. And just like what I was talking about, I love using this indicator for helping me point out which way the trend is going. So as soon as we started printing, even if you missed the Stuber fib setup there, as we started printing higher buy signals, then we just have an even, just basically a tighter invalidation setup, right? When we got our higher buy signal here, that means the pivot point where we found support there, that would be my new invalidation basically. And notice we never came close to that. We never broke it. We printed a new higher buy signal. So that moves my invalidation to the next pivot point. And more recently, just before starting the stream, I mentioned in my Telegram that we actually got a higher buy signal once again on the 5-minute for Aster. So I have a new invalidation basically. So I'm going to lock in most of my profits if we end up dropping this purple line here, which is currently sitting around $1, well, 1.818 basically. But Aster performing absolutely beautifully, hit a new all-time high today. I know there's not a ton of price action here or anything, but sitting absolutely beautifully and holding a nice trend. So, I mean, this thing has been super volatile. It's very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. I want to be clear about that because let's just say I know a lot of people who, have learned my Stuber fib strategy over the years, have mentioned that like, oh yeah, well, I take my position at the 786. But understand if you weren't laddering into that, if I just took a 10x trade at the 786 and I had no laddered entries to help pull my average entry down, had it got invalidated, that would have actually been liquidation, right? 11% at 10x, that's over 100%. So I have a very good understanding of risk management. So I was laddering in smaller position sizes, basically keeping that in mind, because anytime you're looking at entering a trade setup, you guys, you should know how big your loss is going to be if you're going to take it. And honestly, the way I look at it, I enter a trade assuming it's going to lose. Because when I look at things that way, then at least I'm going to consider my risk management. I'm going to consider the size of my positions and so on. So that can be quite helpful. But yeah, definitely want to know how big of a loss you're going to take. But yeah, had I actually hit all of my average or my laddered entries, I would have actually brought my average entry closer to the top of my green box here. In which case, it's still probably like, guys, a coin like this is way more volatile than it looks. That still would have been ending up at a 50 or 60% loss. But understand that I'm not going all in with my account on something like that, right? If I wanted to use, I could have used more margin and less leverage, basically traded it with like 3x or 5x or something like that. But instead, I just put less margin at higher x leverage, so 10x trade. But understanding position sizing, understanding how big the loss is going to be, all that stuff, very important, because as I mentioned, this range is way, way more volatile than it looks. I mean, let's just see from where we ended up breaking resistance here and we got our pullback. I mean, even that was over a 20% pullback, and that's just a range on a 5-minute chart, you guys. So altcoins like this are a lot more volatile than they appear. So again, just make sure to double check before you're trading, understand how big your loss is going to be if you're going to take one and that sort of thing. But yeah, still looking beautiful on the 5 minutes, still holding that higher buy trend. As like I said, as long as we're above 1.818, I have no problems with this trend, and I'm looking to run this position to new all-time highs, hopefully. So beautiful there, you guys. Just an absolutely beautiful position once again. Altcoins have been so kind to me this September. It has been an amazing month. I hope it has been for you as well. Those of you in the Telegram, I've shared most of those big running positions. I know I had some on Ethereum, Solana, Hype, AVAX, what else? Jupiter. A lot of those were shared either in my live streams or on my Telegram live. So hopefully those of you in my channel have been absolutely crushing it as well, my friends. I want to actually hop back over to the Bitcoin weekly chart. You guys, as I mentioned, from a timing perspective, I have a few concerns about this chart, and I think you can see why just looking at how it's labeled here. Typically speaking, and history does not need to repeat itself. I'm not going to be that guy who says that we have to dump now in the next few weeks just because our time frame is up. The last few cycles from bear market bottom to bull market peak has been exactly 152 weeks. Just to show you what I mean here, boom, 151, 152 bars, and that's on a weekly time frame. Same thing here to where we topped about 150 bars, so 150 weeks, or 152 rather. Where we are right now, from our bear market bottom to where we are right now, we're at about 149 weeks, you guys. So if we're going to get a typical 4-year cycle, and if we're going to get the same amount of time on our bull market, technically we're getting very close to our time being up. Things may be different this cycle. I do want to mention that because when gold got ETFs introduced, it actually went on a much longer bull market. I'm not typically a fundamental guy, but I'm open to the idea of accepting that that could be a thing. Maybe Bitcoin with the new ETFs and everything in crypto lately, that maybe we are going to get an extended bull market. Because another thing is, it doesn't really look like we had a blow off top or anything. I mean, Bitcoin has just been building nice support on the way up. That's the thing that I love to see right now, is that we've done a great job of building support, right? We just trade a little bit higher, build some support, trade a little bit higher. I wouldn't say that's support because we never broke above that yet at this point. But the fact that we had this support here where we had our little timeout, our little ranging price action, building structure, we shot up higher, confirming this as a higher low on the trend. And now, even as we pull back here, notice that we still haven't broke that. Obviously, I can put a line there, something like that. So even if we end up pulling back, at least Bitcoin has done a great job of building support along the way. And it's done this the whole cycle, basically. And that's a thing that's driving people nuts in this market, because people in crypto especially are very impatient and don't like to allow structure to build. They think sideways consolidation is the end of the world. They want up only. That's very typical in the crypto space. But I love to see that Bitcoin has created these ranges and created structure on the way up rather than going straight up. That's another reason why I think it's absolutely possible that this bull run ends up being extended for a longer period than normal. Again, it does not have to be different due to the ETFs. It also does not have to be the same because of the time frame here. It's just something worth mentioning. Be ready for anything. As traders, that's basically the end of the story. We need to be ready for absolutely anything. So at this point, if I pull up the trend master as well, I know I brought this up yesterday, still holding a beautiful trend on the weekly, which lines up very close to that trend horizontal support that I mentioned. The MDX trend master on the weekly is lining up very well with that support. So again, I just really like having that confluence there. Point of control way lower. So that's more so if we end up getting some sort of a bear market, for example. That being said, actually, this is very much so looking way into the future. And I am not saying that we have to head to these levels, you guys, but just bringing up indicators and looking at, if we do happen to get a very large reversal, again, I'm not bearish at this point, but if we happen to enter a bear market, what are some levels we could expect? As I mentioned, looking at the point of control from a volume perspective, and let's see how that lines up. If I pull a fib from bear market low to where we have topped out so far, notice that point of control is right at the 886. I know a lot of people think, Bitcoin can never go under $30,000 again. If you're saying that, understand that if anybody is saying Bitcoin can't do that, understand that that person has to be on their first cycle, because anybody who's been in more than one cycle, and that's not to badmouth anybody or anything like that. Everybody has their own first cycle, but every cycle, it feels like there can't possibly be another bear market that size. But so far, every cycle has respected that. And much like that time frame doesn't mean that it has to play out the same, but it absolutely could, right? So let's pull a fib from bear market bottom to bull market highs. Notice where we found support right below the 786. We came into that fib pocket, test the 786, off to the races there. Let's look at the previous bull market. Pull a fib from our bear market lows to our bull market highs. Where do we end up finding support? Right in the middle of that 786, 886 fib pocket. I believe even the very first one, I will have to check this, but let's pull a fib something like this. Obviously, the fibs look a little silly because this is a logarithmic chart, so it scales. But you can see that this has very much so been a thing. Here we got very close to the 886 here, and then going on to our bull market. So every market cycle so far has respected that same Stuber fib strategy that I trade on the 5-minute chart, the 1-minute chart, the hourly chart, the 4-hour, the daily, the weekly. At the end of the day, structure is structure, and it doesn't always have to end up being the exact same. However, history often rhymes, right? It doesn't have to repeat, but it often rhymes. And so far, every cycle has had a certain time period that's been very close, as well as the Fibonacci retracement has been into those Stuber fibs every time. So if we get into a bear market, like I said, not expecting it yet, but if it happens, I would not be too surprised to see some levels that are much lower than anybody wants to consider. Like I said, the point of control is right around that 886 as well. Let's bring up the liquidations band indicator, you guys. That is currently, it's curling to the upside. However, it's right in that fib pocket as well. And just to show you what this indicator has done in the past, just notice how well it has respected the bear market. Well, the bear market bottom has respected this indicator repeatedly. Right here, beautiful bottom here. We got very close here. We retested it perfectly during COVID. Here, our bear market bottom tested it once again. So it's just something that we continue to see every cycle, much like the amount of weeks that a bull market lasts, as well as where the bear markets tend to pull back to. Just notice there's a lot of things lining up. So again, this is very much looking into the future. I just want to put it on your radar for if that big scary price action does happen, that at least we kind of have a sniff that things can go significantly lower than a lot of people want to admit. Aster, looking a little weak. We're having a hard time holding this higher buy signal, but it hasn't broke yet. Like I said, as long as we're above this purple line here, still good for me. Ethereum, this is very similar to what I mentioned on Bitcoin yesterday, is although I like to see that we're forming some sort of support here, there wasn't actually a bullish Stuber fib by any means, because let's just get rid of some of these colors here. But I do not consider this a valid fib pull because my low was up here. This is my lower low. That means the highest point between the two is my confirmed lower high. And that would be up around 4,308 US dollars, 4308. So as long as we're below that at this point, we haven't even broken the 5-minute downtrend for Ethereum. Although obviously there's been a lot of chop the last couple days, the actual downtrend has not broken yet. So it's okay to zoom out sometimes and really see what happens, because at this point, if the trend is going to continue, I'd actually be looking at a bearish fib pull, right? From my confirmed lower high down to my lower low. Something like this. I'm actually going to erase a couple things just to clean it up a little. But basically, that's what I would be looking at. And until either the lower high, so the high of this range, or the lower low, the low of this range, until one of those breaks, this is the range we're trading in. Yes, there's a bunch of little ranges inside that range, but this range has not broken. So basically from 4309 down to 4038 that's just the current range that we're trading in. And until that changes, until we set a new high or a new low, that is still the range that we're in. I still like that Ethereum did get this little bounce off my swing fail zone. And just to show you what I mean, that's pulling a fib from this low up to our highest high. Something like this. And my green box is that swing fail zone, right? The 1 to the 115 fib. So we pulled a little lower than the Stuber fibs, but you guys know, those of you who are in the Telegram, those of you who are in my public live streams the last few weeks, you know that I was in a long from the 786 here on Ethereum, but it did hit my first 2 take profits. The rest got stopped at break even. So at that point, since we weren't able to carry on to new highs, that's where I start to assume that we're going to test lower on the next run. And we actually did. We came down to the swing fail zone, the green box here. So I would like to see some signs of life here. Well, actually, that is a sign of life. I love to see that. Just I would like to see an actual uptrend form, whether that's breaking the 5-minute downtrend or even just looking at the 5-minute chart. And again, bringing up the MDX Trendmaster, for example. If we can start printing, actually here we did print a higher buy. It only lasted briefly, but had you got out on the next sell signal or just taken profits on the way, if you were looking at more of a scalp in that case, it would have worked out. But at this point, it still doesn't look very strong to me. We're still printing lower buy signals. I wouldn't be surprised to see a lower sell signal come into play soon. But that being said, on the midterm, like I said, the 4-hour, we are definitely more so in support than resistance. So I wouldn't really want to be FOMOing into a short late at this point, but I just don't really see a clear setup for a new position on Ethereum unless you have a good risk appetite and you are willing to just basically start laddering into something like this, invalidated below the 115, something like that. Sure, it's possible, but again, it's just high risk because there's so many potential red flags in the market, right? And you know what? Speaking of that, let's just get rid of my drawings. Looking at the MDX trend master here. Here was our higher buy, right? Because we had higher sell signal. Well, actually, higher sell signal, higher sell signal, higher buy signal, higher buy signal. Notice that this was our pivot with our higher buy signal. So I'll make that purple just so it matches up with the color. And notice that we lost that uptrend of the higher trending buy signals. So we broke that to the downside, and we're currently possibly even, so far we're respecting that support as resistance. And on top of that, we did get a slightly, if you notice my crosshairs here, where my dashed line goes to, that next sell signal was very slightly lower. So just a few red flags there, not super clear indications for a new trade setup on Ethereum for me at this point. Solana, I've been talking about this one for quite a while, but we did end up hitting my $250 target. Love to see that. The trend isn't necessarily broken at this point. Yeah, we're getting a significant pullback, but we still have higher trending sell signals on the MDX Trendmaster. We're still printing higher buy signals on the 4-hour. So much like Bitcoin, I think it's possible that we end up testing lower and retesting some support levels of the bigger ranges like this. But at this point, I don't think all hope is lost. It's just that we're kind of in a rough spot right now because we're right in the middle of a range, right? With the low of the range currently being around $175 and the highs of the range being at about $254. At this point, we're right in the middle, basically, right at the 0.5 fib. So it's risky either way at this point if you're looking at trading something like a 4-hour. Scalps are one thing, but as far as the actual midterm trend, we're kind of in limbo in the middle of nowhere right now. So again, just like Bitcoin, I don't think all hope is lost. However, I would not be surprised to see us end up trending a little bit lower at this point. Hype, very much the same thing. I mentioned this yesterday, brought up the trend master. So pulling a fib from our most recent higher buy signal, we are currently testing the 886 pretty much perfectly. So swing traders, I mean, if you are looking for altcoin long positions, I'm really tempted to start laddering into something here. I'm actually going to dive into the shorter time frames very quick. Very soon here for hype. But yeah, the 4-hour, we are currently at that support level that I'm basically looking for with Bitcoin, with Solana, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, nice to see that we're at support. It looks weak, but support always looks weak until it actually gets some sort of a reaction. So at this point, even though we still have this sell signal, which we still have resistance up near our 0.5 fib, at this point, at least it's still a higher sell signal. So if we are going to continue this uptrend, I really don't want to see hype lose, $42.50 basically. Could go a little bit lower for the swing fail zone, basically losing $40. I would start to really have my concerns. But at this point, if the bulls are going to step back in, I would expect it to be fairly soon here. AVAX, I know AVAX has been a strong performer the last couple of weeks. Seen a little bit of a rejection today, but honestly, this trend doesn't look so bad. And at this point, similar to what I was looking at for Bitcoin and targeting 120,000 if we end up getting back up to that macro resistance, just like with Solana, how I was targeting $250. With AVAX, I'm still expecting us to end up testing a little bit higher. Obviously doesn't have to happen. And I mean, there's going to be some turbulence along the way, especially if Bitcoin and everything does end up dumping. But the swing resistance on this bigger swing that started around $55.82, The bigger swing resistance basically starts at around 47 US dollars for AVAX. Doge, I mentioned this one yesterday. Basically the exact same thing like I was talking about with Bitcoin, with Ethereum, basically all the altcoins other than Aster. That one's kind of doing its own thing. But Doge, very much the same thing. Even on the 5-minute, we have not broken the downtrend yet because we have our low. This is our lower low. There was no turbulence in between, no sort of structure, just a straight shot to the downside there, which unfortunately means our lower high on the trend is way up here at about 24.96. So until we break that, just like what I was talking about with Ethereum and Bitcoin, is unfortunately we're in a large downtrend still, even on the 5-minute, and we're in a large range, something like this. So basically, until we either break above 24.96, 24.97, just call it 25 cents. As long as we're below 25 cents and above 22.9 cents, that's basically the range that we're in. It's a very large range. Again, there's obviously smaller ranges inside this bigger range, but until we take out that high or take out that low, that is the current range that we're in, and that has not changed through any of this chop in the last couple of days here. One thing that I want to look for is that even on the trend master, obviously we have, I mean, this is what I was talking about too, right? The trend master trending in a certain direction. We have lower trending buy signals and lower trending sell signals at this point. So at the very least, what I would want to see from the bulls is I would want to see us invalidate our current lower sell signal, which means that where did we pivot from at that point would be something right around there. Let me just erase this so it's easier to see. But basically that would be the resistance level that I would want to see broken. Basically 24.15, we'll call it. Let me just change that very slightly, see if it looks the same. Yeah, basically getting above 24 cents 0.15 or 0.2415, however you want to look at it. But if we could break that series of lower trending sell signals on the 5-minute, I would at least give some credit to the bulls that, hey, a downtrend inside this bigger range has broken. So at that point, we could start looking for long inner retracement. Still a little bit risky because, like I said, the actual range hasn't broken, but at least that would be a first sign of strength, in my opinion. But at this point, we'll have to see what happens there. The 4-hour, we did get very close to that 786. We never quite ended up testing it, so that could be a good signal. A good sign, the fact that maybe we're front running the 786 a little bit there. Or maybe we, that's just a fake out. We get our little bounce and then we correct deeper into our support. Absolutely possible, because anywhere above 19 cents basically is still bullish on the midterm trend here. And I know that's actually a big change. What would that be? About 20% to the downside? Yeah, 20% to the downside is fair game for potential support. Unfortunately, that's just how it is when you're looking at longer time frames, looking at the size of these ranges. Things are volatile right now. Yeah, it's a big volatile range, but at least we're starting to get into our support levels. So that's one of the reasons why I like looking at shorter time frames anyways, just so that, I'm looking at trade setups with a lot tighter than a 20% invalidation, basically. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for Doge at this point. Troll, I had mentioned yesterday, you guys. I saw a lot of FUD on social media about this one right as we were trading at the bottom of our falling wedge. Those of you guys who study chart patterns or trade chart patterns know that generally speaking, a falling wedge is a bullish continuation pattern. It does not always have to be that way. But a lot of people got bearish right at potential support. As I was saying earlier in the stream, that's very common, right? People love to get bearish at support and love to get bullish at resistance. That's very natural behavior from an emotional point of view. But as far as the chart goes, absolutely beautiful. We got that nice little pump. yesterday during the stream. And I mean, since we reversed this, how high did we end up pumping? We ended up getting an 80% move on this one. So again, just very volatile. Obviously, meme coins, low cap coins, they can get very volatile. I think this is currently about $140 million market cap. But after breaking to the downside of this falling wedge, but then reclaiming it very quickly here, and it's been respected so well, right? We had our support, 3 perfect touch points on our support levels. And then even when we ended up dropping that pattern, we ended up respecting that support as resistance very briefly, but then we reclaimed it, and look how aggressively and fast we ended up jumping to the upside of that range. I know so far it's looking like we're getting a bit of a fake out here, but I'm not overly bearish on this at this point, because for one, the fact that we got that fake out to the downside and now pushing to the upside with a little bit of momentum there, but also just how well, as I mentioned, this wedge has been respected on both the support and now also the resistance, right? 1 touch point, 2 touch point, 3 perfect touch points. So at this point, that's a big rule of mine for trading patterns, is I need at least 3 touch points, and I mean exact touch points on a trend line like that before breaking out and retesting it. That's one of my favorite breakout scenarios to take. But again, we need to see if we can actually push above this and flip that resistance into support. If we do, I think it's only a matter of time until this coin ends up retesting all-time highs, or at least near the top of our range. I guess we could end up getting a Stuber fib resistance rejection, for example. But at this point, that falling wedge isn't looking so bad to me. That's a ton of consolidation after this thing did about a 25x from my Stuber fib, 28x in fact. So absolutely beautiful to see price action, to see a big correction to the downside. I mean, it's not like this was a rug pull. It didn't go straight to zero. It's just consolidating sideways and slowly grinding to the downside. That's not panic selling. That's very controlled selling. So that still looks good in my opinion. Cat with mask. This is another, one of the other meme coins that I trade spot a little bit. At this point, just kind of accumulating some, not financial advice. Do make your own decisions. But just looking at this, the way I was looking at Troll before I caught that 25x plus is basically we had our first big Stuber fib setup. We traded sideways for basically months after that, and then eventually popped to the upside after creating a bunch of, well, a big squeeze, as well as just forming a bunch of structured on a horizontal level, basically a big range, and eventually breaking out of that. The longer it takes to break out of a range, typically speaking, the more violent that breakout is going to be. And here's a perfect example. And that's what I'm really hoping for here. It obviously does not have to play out the same, but we are technically trading at support for this guy. So still on my radar there. Aster trying to hold support on the blue line of my Trendmaster indicator. So I'm hoping to see us reclaim the purple there and end up pushing higher. I would love to see it, but we are going to have to see what happens. And guys, as I mentioned earlier, my partners at BloFin currently giving my followers this deposit and trading volume bonus. This is still active until tomorrow. So just kind of last minute here, if that is something you want to take advantage of, my partners at BloFin are currently running that promotion for you guys. And for those of you who are interested in seeing more examples of how I pull Fibonacci's, how I look at market structures, some of my trade setup ideas, just my overall thoughts on the market in general, do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code on the screen, get involved there. Yeah, been quite busy in there, posting lots of stuff. And yeah, most recently, mostly trading Aster the last couple of days. So yeah, QR code on the screen there if that's something that interests you as well. Let me catch up on the chat a little bit here, you guys. Hopefully you're all doing fantastic. Those of you who are still here with me, please do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Guys, this is my personal, financial summit set up this channel for me as well. Partnership is still the same. As far as my Telegram channel, nothing has to be redone, anything like that. It's still the same partnership with BloFin, still the same partnership with Financial Summit. This is just my own trading channel where we're focused on actual trading rather than just buying and holding Bitcoin kind of a thing. I'll trade Bitcoin, Ethereum, altcoins, meme coins, total shit coins, whatever. I don't care. I just like trading volatility basically. So yeah, do me a favor, hit that like, subscribe to the channel. It'll go a long ways, especially with such a new channel. Really want to hit those algorithms hard right off the start. So if you could do that, that would just do me such a huge favor. So thank you so much. And thank you guys for being here with me in general. See a lot of familiar faces. I love that you guys keep coming back. It obviously means that you're interested in what I have to say. Nice to see some new faces as well. So yeah, I hope you're all having a fantastic day so far. Just let me catch up on the chat a little bit. Tom Lee at an average cost of 4,500 on Ethereum, you say? And what are we currently at? 4167. Ooh, well, for his sake, hopefully we're going to go into a nice altcoin season here. Hurley, good to see you here, my friend. Yeah, price action not very nice at the moment. I agree, and that's not just because it's going to the downside. It's because, like I mentioned, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere right now. I know yesterday you had mentioned, Hurley, that you're looking at laddering in starting at 109.5 thousand US dollars. And I still agree with that. I still think that as far as looking for a bullish setup, that makes so much sense to me, just because that is what structure is showing as far as a typical Stuber fib setup. And as I already mentioned, that AI is agreeing with me, because the ALGO master, the MDX ALGO master with the auto Stuber fibs have printed the same bullish setup that I have. So you notice if I flick this on and off, the fibs are lining up absolutely perfectly. So I love to see that as confluence. So yeah, unfortunately, we're kind of stuck in the middle right now. And that goes for a lot of different coins, right? Looking at Solana, we're in the middle of the range I have pulled. Hype is actually at support right now. So like I said, I am going to take a look at the shorter time frame there. That's one that may kind of do its own thing here soon. AVAX right in the middle of a big channel. Doge kind of in the middle of a small channel here on the lower time frames, but a lot of things are like that right now. Not too good for your longs there, Hurley. Do you have a bunch of longs open on altcoins or anything? Because I know you had mentioned that Bitcoin setup yesterday, which we obviously haven't got to yet. Honestly, the only altcoin that I have a position open at this point is Aster, and it's sitting beautifully. But man, this thing, again, guys, I just really have to throw this out there. This has been very volatile, and it's very dangerous because these ranges are significantly bigger than they look. Again, had I not been laddering into this position, had I just taken it at, let's say, even where I took this long here, if I was all in on at a price level like that, to get invalidated would have been liquidation on the position. So the entire position would have got liquidated at that point. So even if my stop loss was further, and you're wondering, well, why didn't my stop loss trigger? It's because it's way more volatile than it looks, and that's actually liquidation. But that's why I had my heavier laddered entries in my swing fail box, because I wanted to bring that average entry down significantly. But yeah, very dangerous, but also very volatile and very profitable if you're nailing these longs. And like I said, guys, I did share this live in my Telegram channel. Yeah, basically right when I started laddering in, we were trading right at the 786 here, and still have a good chunk of that position running. But as I said, I will be locking in most of my position if we invalidate this uptrend of the 5-minute MDX trend master. Basically, if we lose a higher buy signal, I'm going to close most of my position and just leave a very small amount running as a moon bag. But I want to see this trend continue. So far, so good. Absolutely beautiful. So I love to see how well, and that's exactly why you guys know that I love talking about the MDX Trend Master. As far as indicators go, I mean, I'm mostly trading fibs. You guys know I love trading Fibonacci setups. However, as far as looking at indicators, this is by far my favorite indicator. And it's not so much that I take every sell signal and every buy signal with a ton of weight. However, when they're trending in a certain direction, that is when the indicator is literally called the trend master. It really does a great job of pointing out the trend like this. So beautiful signals and just a great way to find your invalidations, basically. For those of you interested, actually, in the description down below, there should be a link, I believe, with a 10% discount for these indicators, if that is something that interests you. I use them every single day. These are basically the MDX ALGO indicators are the only ones that I typically use, other than the RSI sometimes. But yeah, beautiful indicators. 7-day simple on Ethereum is about to cross the 50-day from above. So bearish cross, you're saying? I typically don't look at moving averages and death crosses and golden crosses and stuff. I know I see other people talk about them a lot, and I know the trend master is, well, it's some sort of a moving average. I don't know if it's the 20 simple moving average or what it is, but either way, it is a moving average, I'm sure. But other than that, I don't typically look at moving averages all too much. Great question, Hurley. Stu, do you ever add back into a position after you took profits? Yes, I will do that quite often, usually only when I'm using the trend master, something like this. I was really considering adding into my position heavily with this because I could update my stop loss. I could pull my average entry up a lot on the rest of my position and still be risk-free. Basically, all I would risk is losing some of the profits that I haven't locked in yet. So that is something that I do sometimes, or if there's a new Stuber fib, for example, because if I can update my stop loss with proper structure, proper invalidation levels, then yeah, sometimes after I've taken some profits, position starts getting small. Sometimes I will add in. Sometimes not always, but sometimes I will. This one's quite volatile, so I'm kind of waiting for it to push a little bit higher. If we get another sell and a higher buy signal, I will actually probably add to this position and bump up my stop loss at that point. But yeah, so it is something that I do. If I know that I can keep my stop loss in profit and I know that I have a proper invalidation and I'm not totally screwing my position over, basically. Great question. Yes. When alt season, I would love to answer that. Honestly, I feel like we have been in a very nice alt season already as Bitcoin dominance was dropping off a cliff. It's just that you have to understand this market cycle. Everyone was saying this market cycle is going to be different. They were right, but it wasn't the meme coin super cycle that everyone thought it was going to be. It was completely diluting the altcoin market by having now hundreds of thousands of, or even millions of different altcoins and shit coins at this point. And, certain coins soaking up the liquidity that was out there and that sort of thing. So it's very different than previous market cycles. There was, I think when I got into crypto, there was something like 2,000 cryptos, if that. Actually, I think it was under 1,000. And then all of a sudden it was 2,000, and it was like, oh man, there's all of a sudden a lot of coins. And now it's like hundreds of thousands are being created every week, I'm pretty sure. I don't know the exact numbers on that, but there is, I mean, if you look at some of the degen micro cap early launching meme coin platforms, you see basically every couple seconds a different coin is launching. So it's absolutely wild. And unfortunately, that means that this alt season, unlike the previous couple alt seasons where you could just buy and hold anything and do well, unfortunately, this cycle, I feel like you still have to pick actual winners. But Bitcoin dominance dropping off a cliff. I mean, Ethereum did very well. Solana did very well. Hype has done very well. Just constantly setting higher highs ever since breaking its first downtrend. Yeah, there's been a lot of altcoins have done quite well. But yeah, like I said, I just feel like this market cycle is a little bit different than previous ones, unfortunately. I would love to do the classic, just throw a bunch of money at absolutely anything and just sit on my hands and wait a few months and make a bunch of profit. But unfortunately, I don't think this cycle is built that way. As fun as the Solana meme coins and the Solana ecosystem and just, the new coins being constantly launched, as fun as it is, it's unfortunately caused some irreparable damage to the whole crypto ecosystem, in my opinion. If Ethereum drops below 4062, where is support? Excellent question. Let me just see. What level did you say? 4062? So far, just holding that as a nice little swing fail. I would still say we could go a little bit lower and not necessarily be bearish, because this swing fail pocket technically goes down to about 39.28. I would actually even call it about 39.25. If we end up losing that, basically I want to see where a downtrend is broken. We could end up seeing something like, well, here's where did this big up rally start? It would have started here at about 33.50. Pull a fib, something like that. And we could hope basically that the bulls step back in somewhere between 3,700 and 3,100. That's a huge range, obviously. But basically, yeah, it is what it is. Unfortunately, that's a very big range, but it's volatile times. At this point, I mean, rather than just YOLOing into a long down at these support levels, that's where I'd be looking at something more so like this. Like if let's say the structure, okay, we lose this support, we keep trending to the downside. I would be looking for when we break some sort of a downtrend and then looking for a reversal. And in this case, so this is obviously very theoretical, not saying that's going to happen at the 786, anything like that. But if we just had this type of market structure, I would be looking for that downtrend to break. So if we had this as a low, so actually this was our low, this is our lower low. That means this would be our lower high. Then we'd have a lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. And once that breaks like so, that's where I would start to look for a pullback and start getting bullish again, basically. So it's not so much that I would have YOLO long levels on my radar at that point. If we end up losing this support, I would really want to see what the structure does and wait until we actually break a midterm downtrend and then get some sort of a support retest, something like that. That would be ideal. Doesn't have to happen, but that's kind of what I'd be watching for, breaking that downtrend. Well, BTC at 40K, must buy the dip. Yeah, you know what? Talking about the weekly chart there, if we end up going down to 40K, yeah, I'll be buying the shit out of that. Just like, guys, I got quite bullish on this market cycle after the FTX collapse. Around that 18,000, 20,000, I was getting very bullish at that point. And same thing going into the next market cycle. I will be very excited to start playing the start of a bull market again. Unfortunately, a lot of people, and even people watching the stream probably, if we enter a real bear market, everyone thinks that they're going to stick around. But when you actually feel the pain of a bear market, especially if you're a big altcoin holder, unfortunately, a lot of those people who think they're bullish long-term are going to disappear. It's just the sad reality of this market. But yeah, I've been through a couple bear markets at this point, and I think they're fun. And that's the thing, guys. And being here with me and seeing how I trade and actually looking at market structure and whatnot, and looking at trading structure and trading strategies rather than, looking at tweets and fundamentals and trying to trade those and just getting wrecked repeatedly. How I trade this to the upside, even though I've been mostly trading bullish Stubers, the same goes to the downside. And in the bear market, I am going to be looking for a whole bunch of shorting scenarios, because trading the downside in a bear market's a lot of fun. For one, it's very fun to be making profit while the rest of the market is in complete panic and chaos. There's a special feeling to making money to the downside like that. And the moves typically happen quite quickly. So there's still a lot of money to be made in a bear market, especially now that there's so many meme coins out there. I mean, you still have to pick the right meme coin to nail it to the upside, but we know damn well that when the bear market actually shows up, meme coins are all going to get hammered. They're all going to get hammered right into the ground. Even the ones that survive long term, they're just going to get absolutely devastated in the bear market. And it's going to be a lot of fun shorting those. Yeah, the good old days are gone. I blame the Solana ecosystem. Exactly, Jay. 41.56 is the halfway back on that big pull you just did for Ethereum. And that's what Ethereum's at now. Yeah, exactly. Right. That bigger fib pull. And much like what I was showing on some of those other charts, where we're just kind of trading right in the middle of a range, that could very much be the case here as well. We still do have this support here. We haven't lost it yet. But if we do, yeah, we could go significantly lower, unfortunately, but we'll have to see what happens. Anyways, my friends, I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. So thank you so much for joining me here for this live stream on my brand new channel. Hopefully you guys found this stream useful. If so, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss these live streams. Help the algorithm out, help this channel catch some steam moving forward. And it'll be that much more entertaining to be doing these live streams with you guys, more trade setup ideas and all that sort of thing. So as I mentioned, if you want access into my private Telegram channel, follow the QR code on the screen. That should take you through a sign up bot, which will get you signed up and under me on BloFin, where my partners at BloFin give these this current promotion here, which is still active until tomorrow. They're very good about keeping you guys up to date with new promos for deposit bonuses, trading volume bonuses, all that sort of thing. So if that is something that interests you, get signed up. And then that'll also get you access into my private Telegram channel, just where I'm sharing my thoughts on the market, trade setup ideas, Fibonacci setups, market structure, all that sort of good stuff, you guys. So yeah, with that, I think that's about all. So thank you again so much for being here with me, you guys. Planning to do another live stream tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. With that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends.